From the editors of Cook's Illustrated magazine, it's America's Test Kitchen. With your host, Christopher Kimball. Featuring Test Kitchen chefs Julia Collin-Davison, Bridget Lancaster, Becky Hayes, with Adam Reed in the Equipment Corner and Jack Bishop in the Tasting Lab. Discover the secrets of America's foremost food testers and tasters today on America's Test Kitchen. Today on America's Test Kitchen, Julia uncovers the secrets to making the best prime rib at home and serves it with perfectly roasted Brussels sprouts. And in the Tasting Lab, Jack challenges Chris to a tasting of premium butters. That's all right here on America's Test Kitchen. America's Test Kitchen is brought to you by DCS by Fisher & Paykel. America's cooks rely on innovation and culinary precision. DCS by Fisher & Paykel, offering premium indoor and outdoor kitchen appliances.
And by Kohler, inspiring home chefs to create a professional-level kitchen with innovative sinks, faucets, and cook centers. Kohler.
Diamond Crystal Salt for the professional chef and those who want to cook like one. From our family to yours, fresh from the field, Foxy Organic Vegetables. Cooking.com, an online retailer for the kitchen enthusiast. If it's not in your kitchen, try ours. Wente Vineyards, family-owned, estate-grown, sustainably farmed since 1883. Lee Kum Kee, providing authentic Chinese sauces for the past 125 years.
Before we talk about how to cook prime rib, let's talk about where it comes from on the beef. Well, there are 13 ribs, and 5 of them occur in the chuck. This is the shoulder area. The next 7 occur in the rib area, ribs 6 through 12, and there's 1 final rib in the loin. One other quick point about how a cow or beefer is built. There are a lot of muscles up in the shoulder areas, a lot of work, a lot of energy. The front legs are connected, of course. As you get towards the back, there are fewer muscles, and that's going to determine a little bit about how we choose a cut to cook. So this is the head of the animal here in this direction. This is the back of the animal. This is the entire rib area. These are the first ribs, 6 through 10 here, and these are the ribs 10 through 12. So this is the back of the rib area, this is the front. This part, ribs 10 through 12, is referred to as the first cut. It's the preferred cut, and I'll explain why in a second. This is called the second cut. Again, it's the front of the rib area closer to the chuck. We've cut steaks off just to show you the difference between this cut and this cut. This comes from the second cut. You can see there are lots of different muscles here. Again, as I said, the front of the animal has more muscles, a lot of intermuscular fat. It's a messier cut. There's more fat in it. We don't like it quite as much. The first cut, which almost everyone prefers, is here, and this is a steak cut out of that, and you can see it's basically all one muscle, because as you go back in the cow, it simplifies into one muscle. There's less fat in it. It's actually a much better cut. So let's go into the kitchen with Julia and take the first cut, ribs 10 through 12, and figure out the best way to make the world's best prime rib. Dip into our email bag to start this recipe. This is from Anna. She writes, during more than one program we have watched, you have a 3-dimensional cow and back. Please have someone remove the udder. She spells it U-T-T-E-R, whatever.
Not going to do that one.
And neuter the animal. Or check with the slaughterhouse, because they don't use cows for our steaks. So it's true, there is an udder here, which would be incorrect.
Right.
So it was a choice between udder or pizzle. So we took udder. Or I guess we could neuter the cow. By the way, cows do have horns. I've been chased by many cows with long horns. Yes.
I don't want to know.
So the horns have nothing to do with whether there is an udder or not. This is utterly ridiculous. So let's
utterly fascinating.
Let's do prime rib.
Right. So now on to the best prime rib, and this is a 7-pound prime rib, bone-in. So there's about 3 bones. And the first thing we're going to do is actually remove the meat from the bones, which a lot of recipes don't do. But we found it makes the meat easier to maneuver when you brown it in a skillet. It also allows us to season the whole thing thoroughly. It makes it really easy to serve. So what you want to do is you want to stand it up, and using a very sharp knife, you want to just cut right along the bones, and then you open it up with your fingers and then just take your time and follow the curvature of the bones down with every slice, and just very carefully take this expensive piece of meat off the bone. Now we're not going to throw these out. In fact, we're going to put this boneless roast back on the bones when roasting because it acts as a nice insulator and will ensure that the roast cooks through evenly. So we're not going to throw those out. All right, so there we go.
So you know I can be a lazy cook. So this is extra work. So you're taking it off the bone so you can put it back on again? Mm-hmm. So explain that.
All right. Well, of course, before you roast it, you want a nice, crisp, golden exterior, and you get that by searing it in a skillet. And when the bones are on, it's a lot harder to maneuver around. Right. Also, we're about to salt it, and we know the benefits of letting the salt sit on the meat over time. And if it's off the bone, you've doubled your surface area for seasoning the meat and getting it inside.
You always have good reasons. Okay.
And there's a third reason, which is when you serve it, it makes it very easy to make nice, even portions.
Three, let's see, 3 reasons, okay.
All right, so before we salt the meat, we're gonna make a quick cross-hatch pattern in the surface of this meat so the salt can really get in there. And again, using the sharp knife, you don't wanna go too far into the meat, just through this fat cap. And about, an inch apart, just do a nice cross-hatch pattern. And then the fat, of course, is thicker in some areas and thinner in some areas. So as you cut, you can sort of monitor how deep you go. And I'll just move it and do the other direction. All right, so now we're going to salt it. And this is 2 tablespoons of kosher salt. We're going to rub it evenly over both sides of the meat, and you really want to work it into the fat that you just scored so it can really get in there. Of course, we'll do the back side too. And the bottom. And a little bit on the sides. All right, just sort of mop up any salt left on the board with the roast itself. And now, of course, we're going to let it sit for at least 24 hours, but you could do it up to 4 days ahead of time. And to save space, I'm just going to put it back on the bone. Okay. Put it on the plate, and we're going to refrigerate it uncovered for at least a day, but you could do this up to 4 days in advance. All right, so this meat has been salted for over 24 hours, and it's ready to get a nice sear, of course, before we throw it in the oven to roast it. So I'm going to take it off the bone, put it into the skillet. And there was just 2 teaspoons of vegetable oil in this skillet that we got nice and hot until it was just smoking. Now we're going to brown it on all the sides except for the cut side, because 1, we want to put it right back on the bones, and 2, when you get prime rib, you kind of want that bone side not to be so brown.
You know, we researched this recipe, and there were some chefs like Heston Blumenthal who got around this problem by using a blowtorch.
Yeah. That was fun time in the kitchen.
Well, I mean, it would work.
It would.
But nobody has a sufficiently large.
It's a little bit more dangerous. Yeah. No, so we're just going to sear it for about 6 or 9 minutes, again, on all sides. And a trick, of course, to getting it on the bottom is you just stand here and you hold it up like that. So we'll get it seared on all sides except for the side that was touching the bone. All right, so this guy is nice and well browned. Now we're going to take him out of the skillet, and it's just so much easier to handle without those bones on there. I'm going to put it back on the bones the way it was cut off. And I'm just going to let it cool for a few minutes before I tie the bones back on and we throw it back in the oven.
So that looks like kind of messy work.
A little bit.
So it's worth doing because there's just a lot of flavor?
Yeah, and it's a lot of money right here. This is an expensive piece of meat.
Now you went straight to my heart.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's an expensive piece of meat, and there's these few little steps that you do will really ensure that it comes out just right. And it's not a lot of ingredients. So far, just 3, the oil, the salt, and the beef. So not complicated, but just a few steps make it perfect.
Right.
All right, so our browned roast has cooled off for a few minutes, and now we're going to tie it back to the bones before we start roasting. You just need 2 good pieces of twine, and you'll tie it right between the bones. There's always that trick that you go around twice the first time, and it kind of holds itself in place a little better. Works on Christmas gifts, too.
Oh, you think I give Christmas presents?
I should know by now that you don't, right?
Scrooge.
All right, and I'm just going to snip off these ends. All right, so we're going to season up with a little bit of pepper because, of course, so far it's only seen some salt. And we're going to put this onto a wire rack on a rim baking sheet. So now we're going to throw it in the oven. Now, the lower the temperature of the oven, the more moist and tender the meat was, and the more evenly cooked it was. And the lowest our ovens can go is 200 degrees. So we're going to roast it in a 200-degree oven for about 3 to 4 hours until it reaches 110. That's the internal temperature. And then we're going to let it climb those last few degrees even more slowly when the oven is off. Okay. So the best way to tell the temperature of the roast is to use one of these probes if you have one. And I have it preset to be 110. And I'm going to stick it into the center. And then we'll leave this, of course, outside the oven. The cord goes through the oven door, and it lets us know when the roast is ready. And there we go. So it'll take about 3 or 4 hours till that reaches about 110 degrees.
Our first letter is from John from Chicago, who writes, a bartender once told me that lemon and lime juices are better if they're left out for a few hours before using. Is this true? Well, actually, it is true. Now, there are aromatic compounds, volatile compounds in the juices, and they oxidize over time. And you think that would take away from the fresh taste, but oddly enough, it actually improves. So up to 6 hours, if you let lemon juice and lime juice sit, you actually get a more citrusy flavor. Second letter is from Melissa from Baltimore. When a recipe calls for room temperature eggs, does this really matter? Well, you know, for years, I didn't bother doing anything to the cold eggs before, let's say, making a cake. But I've made a few white cakes recently, and I didn't let the eggs come up to room temperature, and the batter wasn't thick, and it didn't rise properly. It turns out that in lots of cakes, it matters a lot, because a room temperature egg will beat up, form the right kind of emulsion, you get a thick batter, and you get the right kind of cake. So don't leave out that step. Our last question is, I've seen 3-minute pasta at my supermarket. Is it any good? Yes, Ronzoni does make quote-unquote 3-minute pasta. They make them in penne style, elbows, and rotini. We boil them up with a regular pasta, and it turns out that they are mushy. So the answer is, it's not worth 5 or 6 minutes of boiling time. Buy the real thing.
All right, so it's been about 3.5 hours, and the internal temperature of our roast is 113, which is perfect. Now we're going to turn the oven off, and without opening the oven door or releasing any of the oven heat, we're going to let the roast hang out in there for another half an hour to an hour until you reach the right internal temperature, which for medium rare is 125.
So this is taking slow, gentle cooking to a new low.
It is. All right, so it's been a little over half an hour, and we can see the internal temperature of our roast is 127, which is perfect for medium rare. So now we're going to take out the roast and remove this probe. I'm going to take this nice, oh, it's gorgeous. That's good. All right, so of course we have to let this rest for at least half an hour to up to an hour before we slice into it so those juices can redistribute. And we're going to tint it with foil. And there you have it.
I like this. This is, all the work happens in the store.
That's right.
Nothing happens in the kitchen. That's good. It's easy. Now, there are people and things in America that have a really bad rep.
Yes.
Right, and here are a few
Why
of
are you
them.
pointing at me?
So, here's my favorite guy personally, Calvin Coolidge. But you never know who he was.
I've heard the name.
You heard the name, so he definitely needs a little PR.
He does.
Here's Lindsay Lohan.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, so she obviously needs a little help.
Enough said.
And Ms. Love.
Hey, where'd you get that picture of me?
I don't know. It's in my wallet. So she obviously has a little PR problem. And I would have to say Brussels sprouts are probably in the same category.
I agree.
Corey, you love Brussels sprouts.
I'm a new fan to Brussels sprouts. I've been converted. And the trick to getting them to taste really good is to get them tender on the inside and a little bit browned on the outside. And that's actually pretty hard. Most recipes pre-cook them, usually steam them, and then throw them in a hot oven, which is a lot of pots and pans for a side dish.
When I was a kid, they cooked them for about an hour.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So they had some good texture
That's
left.
why they have a bad rep.
So we're going to start with 2¼ pounds of Brussels sprouts, which is enough to feed a crowd of 6 to 8 people, which is about the same as our prime rib that's resting nicely next to you. And what you want to do is, of course, trim the end of the Brussels sprout. And then if they're on the small side, you can cut them in half. But if they're on the big side like this, and usually you get kind of a mixed bag when you buy them, you can cut them into quarters. That way they'll cook at the same rate. Okay, here's our last little guy. Cut him in half. So now we have all these Brussels sprouts that have been washed and prepped. And of course, we're going to toss them with a little oil. And this is 3 tablespoons of olive oil. And the trick we learned is to also add just a tablespoon of water. And what we're going to do is when we put them on the baking sheet, we're going to cover the baking sheet, and this water will help make steam so that it makes the Brussels sprouts tender but not mushy, because it'll evaporate pretty quickly, and then they can brown. So that was just a tablespoon of water. This is a little bit of salt. This is 3/4 of a teaspoon. And this is a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. I'm just going to toss this all together.
So this is kind of like blanching them, but not blanching.
That's right, yeah. The one dish approach to Brussels sprouts. All right, so we're going to put them on this rimmed baking sheet. And the key is to put them all cut side down so they get nice and browned. So you just spread them out, flip them all over.
Here, would you like me to help?
Sure, thank you.
This was a test. I almost failed.
I like to throw a few kitchen tests your way. Perfect. Thank you. So now we're going to cover them. And of course, again, that will help trap the steam during the initial part of the cooking. And then we're going to remove the foil at the end so they can get a little brown. Okay. So into a very hot oven. We're going to use the top of the oven so that they get nice and brown when we remove the foil. 500-degree oven for 10 minutes with the foil, 10 minutes without. All right, so it's been 10 minutes that these Brussels sprouts have been in the oven, and it's time to remove the foil. It's surprising how the foil doesn't get really hot. You can pretty much touch it.
Is this a joke?
Nope.
Yeah, it does. I think it's so thin.
Yeah.
It doesn't retain heat.
Yep. So we're going to put these Brussels sprouts back in for another 10 to 12 minutes till they get a little brown on top.
So now it's time to speak with our tasting expert, Jack Bishop, about which butter won our testing. I've spent my life in a terrible butter conundrum, which is that no matter what kind of butter I buy after a few days in the refrigerator, it tastes like bad popcorn. So I'm here to figure out which type of butter to buy, but also how to keep it fresh as well, which seems to be my lifelong problem.
Well, I'm going to try to help, Chris. We'll see. We've got 10 different brands of unsalted butter, and I've got 4 samples here. You can start serving yourself. Your biggest problem in terms of freshness of butter is you're probably keeping your butter in the wrong place. Butter belongs in the freezer until the absolute last moment that you want to use it. In the refrigerator, no matter what you do, it is going to pick up odors from other ingredients in the refrigerator and taste stale and off. Now, there are some things the manufacturers can do. I have here a brand that's wrapped in foil, and we found that all the brands that were wrapped in foil tended to have better flavors than the brands wrapped in parchment. There was one exception. This brand here, which is Land O'Lakes, has something called Flavor Protect Wrapper, which sounds like a gimmick, but it actually is a patented coating, and this was the only brand that was wrapped in the parchment paper that we felt did not have off flavors. In general, look for foil, keep it in the freezer until you're going to use it. So if you're buying, by sticks, take 1 stick at a time, 1 pack at a time, put it in the refrigerator, and then use it quickly. The big thing that we were really looking at was cultured butter versus sweet cream butter. So classic American butter starts with sweet cream, the cream that you buy in the supermarket that they churn. Old-fashioned butter, the kind that our grandparents grew up on and that most Europeans use, starts with cultured cream. The cream is allowed to ripen for a couple of days, then they inoculate it with a starter culture like they do with yogurt or sour cream. It's bacteria basically to develop flavor. And the cultured butters have grassier notes. They can be barnyardy if they put too much culture in. And one of the questions we started out with was, are the cultured butters, which are generally more expensive, sometimes they're labeled European style, better than the classic sweet cream butters? The answer is basically yes. There was one sweet cream brand that we like, but for the most part, the cultured butters were in the top half of the ratings and the sweet cream butters were in the bottom half. Now, once you start baking with a cultured butter, we made cookies, we made croissant, those flavor notes, those nuances completely disappear. Once you bake with it, you add a lot of sugar and flour. So it's really just a question of spreading on your toaster, licking off the spoon as you're doing this morning. So.
Okay, the clear loser was this because it tasted really off to me. It had some really off flavors.
Okay.
This was my clear winner. I mean, first of all, it looks better. And I'm a guy who likes looks, but it has a very clean taste. I like that a lot.
Okay.
This had a slightly off flavor, not nearly as bad as that. And this one I thought was pretty good. It was kind of grassy, but this one definitely tasted off. This, a little off, this was very good, and this was pretty good.
Okay, do you want to start with what you like or what you don't like?
Let's start with what I don't like.
Okay.
So this is the one I thought had a really off taste.
This is Horizon. We felt like this was at the bottom of the rankings for exactly the reason that you said. This is in a paper wrapper, and this seemed like one of the brands, no matter how many times we bought it, where we bought it, by the time we got it back to the test kitchen, it already had some off notes in the butter. And you tasted those today.
It tastes like the butter in my refrigerator, which always tastes up. This is my winner. Can we jump to the winner?
Sure. This is Kerrygold. This is an Irish cultured butter. Our tasters did not like this. This is one of the ones that we thought had too much personality.
Oh, I like personality.
I think you're eating with your eyes there with that bright
No,
yellow.
I'm obviously Irish. I like that a lot. This one I thought had a slightly off flavor.
This was our runner-up, Land O'Lakes. This was in second place. It was the only sweet cream butter that did really well in the taste test. You know, it's the classic supermarket choice.
And I like this as my number 2.
That was our tasting panel's winner. That's despite the name Plus Gras. It is an American-made European-style butter. It is $10 a pound, so you better really like it if you're going to be using that. And it's not really for baking; it's really for spreading on toast.
I must be part Irish because I like the Kerrygold. Has a nice color as well, but the runner-up today was Land O'Lakes, which is half the price of the actual winner, which is Plus Gras, at an amazing $10 a pound.
All right, so these Brussels sprouts are just out of the oven, looking gorgeous.
They do look great.
I'm just gonna put them on this platter. Oh, they smell so good.
They look a lot better than the ones I ate as a child. They actually have color.
Yeah. All right. All right, so I'm gonna cover them with foil so they stay warm when we finish our roast. Now, our roast has been sitting here for a little over 30 minutes, and unfortunately, oh, it's gorgeous, but this crisp crust has gotten a little soggy under the steaming of the foil, so we're gonna crisp it up really quickly under the broiler.
Have you ever heard the expression, leave well enough alone? Does that ring a
I've
bell?
heard the expression, but I've never really paid attention
Lived it.
to it.
You've never lived it.
It's not my style. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna put this under the broiler just for a couple minutes to get it a little bit more crisp, and I have the broiler heating up. And to elevate this fat cap on the top, what we're gonna do is take this foil ball, pop it right under the ribs so that it's a little bit more level so it can get nice and crisp under the broiler. And then it'll take anywhere from 2 to 6 minutes to get that crust back.
This is your clever cooking segment.
It is.
That's actually a very good idea.
So that roast has been under the broiler for a couple minutes. Oh, she's a beauty. Thank you. And she's ready to eat. No more resting required.
And you were right again.
Yeah.
It was worth
Look at
that extra little bit.
Oh, that candy on top. All right, now the best part is that you can take it right off the bone, and it's super easy to slice and serve. So we're gonna orient the roast that way so we get nice, round, perfect slices. Oh, perfectly cooked. This is gonna taste good.
All right, it'll taste better than that, I suspect. Of course, you're not letting me anywhere near it, so
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll let you have the center slice.
Okay, thank you. Boy.
Oh, that's gonna taste good. Thank you. And let's not forget our Brussels sprouts. May I serve you some? And now there's 2 sauces that we have here that you can put on the meat. One is a salsa verde, and the other is a mustard cream sauce. Yeah, I'm gonna go for the salsa verde too.
Yeah, well, I think it's a rich meat, so. Now, everybody from my state of Vermont's looking at this going like, can we cook it more?
Oh, really?
I love it like this.
Oh, this is perfect medium rare in my book.
Boy, that is perfectly cooked.
Oh, this is a meal fit for a king.
Well, thank you, Julia. She's never called me a king before.
And a princess.
well, that's true.
Oh, those Brussels are good.
The Brussels sprouts have real flavor. They're roasted, which I love. Actually, I make them this way for Thanksgiving. They're terrific. And the meat is perfect. So the secret to great prime rib was to salt it, let it sit in the fridge uncovered for up to 4 days, then put it into a very low oven, actually with the oven off for the last hour and a half or so. And that way the meat cooks very evenly, a lot of flavor development. Brussels sprouts, a little bit of water, salt, and pepper. 20 minutes, 10 minutes at 500 degrees, covered. Take the foil off, finish it at the same temperature. And there you have it. From America's Test Kitchen to your kitchen, these two recipes, prime rib and roasted Brussels sprouts, along with the two sauces. All of the recipes from this season are tasting results, testing results. You can also watch selected episodes of the show at our website, americastestkitchentv.com. Oh, I bet Calvin Coolidge ate this.
Who?
No, he's my favorite person, hands down.
He was president?
Yeah.
Let us help with dinner tonight. Visit our website anytime for free access to this season's recipes, taste tests, and equipment ratings, or to watch current season episodes. Log on to americastestkitchentv.com.
The complete America's Test Kitchen TV show cookbook includes every recipe, tasting, and testing from all 13 years' shows, including this season. With over 850 recipes, it's our most comprehensive collection ever. The cost is $29.95, $10 less than the cover price. You will also receive this 4-DVD set, a $39.95 value, featuring all 26 episodes from this season at no additional charge. To order, call 1-800-831-8315 or order online at americastestkitchentv.com.
America's Test Kitchen is brought to you by DCS by Fisher & Paykel. America's cooks rely on innovation and culinary precision. DCS by Fisher & Paykel, offering premium indoor and outdoor kitchen appliances. Cooking.com, an online retailer for the kitchen enthusiast. If it's not in your kitchen, try ours. From our family to yours, fresh from the field, Foxy Organic Vegetables. Kohler. Diamond Crystal Salt, the gourmet choice. Wente Vineyards. And by Lee Kum Kee.